I'm ready.
All right, call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America,
and
to
to
the
the
republic
for which it stands, one nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for
liberty,
all.
justice for all.
That
Roll
works so
call.
well over Zoom.
I know. Roll call.
Mr. Bordenaro?
Here.
Mr. Fernandez?
Here.
Mr. Grady? Here. Ms. McNair?
Here,
Mr. Millard?
Here,
Mr. Paradis?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. I don't believe we have anyone on for public comments, do we, Kevin? I don't think we do.
No.
Okay. All right, so may I have a motion? Hello? Okay,
I make a motion to approve the prior minutes of the July 9, 2024 regular meeting.
second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
aye,
I abstain.
Okay. Okay. So approved. Thank you. May I have a motion on new business item 1?
Move to approve $140,000 fiscal year 25 non-budgeted appropriation of general fund unassigned fund balance to fund the study of the 3 water sewer systems in Berlin, namely the Berlin Water Control, Kensington Fire District, and the Worthington Fire District.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
So one of my questions, I listened to the discussion last night also at Tuesday's town council meeting, and I went through some of the materials today. One of the questions I have is, this is Berlin paying for a study that benefits 3 water departments. I gather 2 of which are not paying for any of the funding on this. My question becomes is, are they on board with doing this? Are they going to be cooperative? And will they be amenable to suggestions and whatever? Or are we just trying to push a rock up the hill again?
They have already provided some information based on a FOI request. But I'm going to defer to Ray Jarema, who's on the call. Ray is our manager of Berlin Water Control, and he's really been spearheading the effort to take a look at 3 districts and what is best for the future of Berlin. And I'll let Ray respond to that.
Okay,
I have to give you a little history. In all, basically Kensington purchased water from New Britain and of course sold it to Worthington. Worthington sold it to East Berlin. So there were 3 fire districts, and the fire district East Berlin went defunct. So in 1966, the town decided to take it over, and this became the Berlin Water Control Commission. So the issue here is that there's a concern that infrastructure for the other 2 districts, if they're not properly done, may be able to have the same thing, repeat history again. So this is one of the reasons for having it. And then the other reason for this, and we know it's a big financial item, is the fact that in 1998, 1996, Fuss and O'Neill was hired to do an analysis, and they did an analysis, but they didn't finish it because the town council felt that it wasn't worth it. And at the time, they pulled back on it. And so we really don't have any specific information. And there's a concern from our board commission that basically something like this can happen again, because the 2 other districts have infrastructure requirements and big needs, we think, from the water perspective and from the sewer perspective. Now, they haven't been too cooperative. First of all, they had indicated to us that they don't want to cooperate by any financial participation. Secondly, we had our town attorney actually, after 7 months, glean some information from both of the districts, and we thought it was enough. So the consultant that we had hired, who had gone to bid, basically looked at the information and said that they could make a reasonable report from it. The report would include infrastructure, but also the Leonard Engineering, which was purchased by Haley Ward, looked at the information and said that they could do the technical aspect, and they cooperated with another consultant, Griff Tillis. Griff Tillis is a financial element who has worked with MDC, Regional Water, and some other larger utilities. They would do the financial aspect for the analysis. So in essence, they haven't been forthcoming. Will they accept any changes or reviews of that? That isn't at this point. I think the town recognizes the need, and this is one of the reasons we went to the town rather than the board, for providing funds, because if anything happens, we're gonna have a repeat of the East Berlin system, and we'll be obligated to take over the system. So we really need to know what the infrastructure requirements and the outstanding issues are with each of the districts. I hope I answered your question. If not, you.
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, it's not a warm fuzzy feeling that they're not on board. I mean, you could do all this work and you'll know, and they'll continue going the way they're doing, and the systems will continue to degrade and whatsoever. The attorney the other night basically indicated there's only two ways to fix this problem, really, and that's for each board, for each water district to come together as a group and override the board's decision and say, we want to dissolve the water district, or to go through the legislature because it was created by the legislature and the town has absolutely no control over it whatsoever. So I'm just saying, is this the prudent path to take, or is it time to start to go to some of our legislative representatives and say, we need to tackle this once and for all? Because it's a big albatross hanging around our neck.
I agree, and that would be the other option to do it, because, but also there's a public perspective and public education portion of it, because I sit here every day and minimally I get one or two questions every day. People are confused as to what system that they're operating on. And they all operate under three different systems, three different locations, three different ways. And this goes back historically, actually. I had a report back here in 1950 that they couldn't get along at any meeting, let alone. And it seems to be the same case now. So I think your reservations and concerns are obvious, and I don't doubt them. But on the other hand, I think we need a third-party analysis of the financial perspective. Personally, the mill rate established by both Worthington and Kensington are archaic. I don't know of many utilities or any utilities that use that any longer. And their rates have climbed up to the point where they're almost equal to us. And then they have the tax rate additionally. As a Worthington customer, I don't particularly care for that. It doesn't make sense to me. I want to pay for what I use, not for the value of my house.
I guess my perspective is I'd really, really like to see kind of a two-pronged approach. I understand, Ray, what you're saying, and I agree that would be extremely valuable information. It would be prudent, in my opinion, to pursue in parallel finding, trying to approach the legislature and find out what can be done about this, or getting whatever regulatory agency oversees them to do an investigation and find out that they're running this thing very poorly and make a pitch that it should be consolidated.
We've looked at that. You're not going to get the health department at this point in time to do much at this point in time. Impura is not doesn't regulate municipalities.
Okay.
Your point about the legislation is correct, though. Donna Beach and Jack Fazina are very familiar with it. Also Rick Lopes, so that there is a opportunity to go to the legislature and look at that aspect as well. So those are things that are being considered as well. But I think the important part right now is to have an independent analysis done and to see how big the problem is. My estimates in some of these things are going to be they're into the millions of dollars. We have reports back here from 2016. When I first got the information from the FOI, there was supposed to be some relining at the Kensington Fire District of 45,000 feet. That's 8.6 miles. And that was estimated to cost 7 million. In today's dollars, what they had figured is way under, and it should have been probably closer to 12 million. So, I mean, and each one has its cost to bear. And we've had a lot of projects, and I've been ticking them off little by little. So we're not completely out of the woods either. We have projects that we need to address as well. But I think as a town, we have no concept or perception of what needs to be done. And this consultant, along with the financial consultant portion, is going to give us a better understanding of what can be done and what should be done.
Okay. I had a question that I didn't see any timeline in this proposal. Is there? I mean,
The timeline, Well, other than what the engineer had indicated to me, is potentially doing it by the end of the year.
Okay,
So-
wasn't in the document though, right?
No, it's not in the document. You're correct. It's not in the document and, it's kind of, loose. Actually, the engineer, and I didn't give you a timeline to begin with. This actual proposal came out in January of 2023.
Gotcha.
They held their cost. The other bidder was DPC Engineering, who bid 199,000. So this was 122,000, looked pretty reasonable. The other additional $6,000 is for analysis, for hydraulic analysis, which I'm in favor of the few additional points that they need for data analysis within the distribution. What the utility engineer plans to do is to take a look at three systems and see if they can cooperatively be functional as one. And historically, and many of you maybe don't know or don't remember, there was a townwide system that actually sustained both districts. Because if the townwide system hadn't been put in, both districts wouldn't have been able to function in today's world.
So have they gotten a purchase order already?
No, because this funding needs to be approved. before we
Okay.
can do the
All right,
purchase.
so as part of the
Here's the
purchase
next
order,
step.
we should at least put some, whether it's a target end date or whatever, or some completion date, you know?
We can do that.
All right, any other questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Before, when you were talking about a previous collapse of a district years ago, which district is it that you're afraid of something happening with now?
Both. There are elements in both districts that are problematic. After this is my personal opinion, so I have to be very
Yes.
careful to say here, because I've read the reports. I didn't have the reports before, but when I read the reports, they make me a little bit anxious and worried because there's some big financial commitments on both of the districts, in the water and sewer. Mattabassett's right currently on our backs because we are discharging more than they would like to see from us and are very concerned about that level. And as a result of that, Cromwell and the other towns are a little bit upset with us, personally Berlin, because we're providing a high I&I. And we know it's coming in, and we've actually monitored in some locations. Kensington has a huge I&I problem. Worthington can't put its hands around it because they don't have any meters, but we also know that there are selected areas within that sections, their sections that have high I&I. And I&I is inflow and infiltration, so just to explain that.
So last time when one district failed, that created the
It created the Berlin Water Control Commission. in
okay.
67 technically.
So okay, so if one of the others failed, what determines who picks them up?
Well, it would more likely be the town. And I don't know if you understand it, but we actually underwrite on any of their loans. So if they fail on their loan commitments, we're obligated to take it. And I didn't realize this until I saw the USDA loan from Worthington Fire District for their meter pits. And it says clearly in their annual report that if they fail to pay any of their payments, the town picks up the fee. I think it's the town. It's not going to be Berlin Water Control.
You agree with that, Kevin?
I do. I think it would be the town. We do disclose in our financials, the outstanding debt. We're required to disclose those in our financials every year. I will say from a current standpoint, both Kensington Fire District and Worthington Fire District are current on the latest Mattabasset bills. So the Berlin Water Control makes the payment for the entire amount, and then both water districts reimburse Berlin Water Control, and they both did so, and they both did so timely. We're at the start of the year. We pay July 1st, so to have reimbursements from both of them. I think where Ray's issue comes with physical infrastructure and potential significant investments that might be required if they're behind. And, you know, the town would be, I would say that it would be the town and then likely put into Berlin Water Control as just an addition to the proprietary fund.
Okay. Ray,
May I make one more comment? Since I've
Sure.
been here, I've seen them renege on some wastewater stuff. I know. If many of you probably have some good idea, when you do a project, you have a mobilization fee. Well, the town paid for the mobilization of bringing a contractor in to do a relining. Both districts had additional work that they wanted done, and both districts reneged. This is in 2012, which is just about, and I came in 2013. So the thing is, I was quite surprised that this was the cheapest route, and they both denied that they were gonna do any additional work in the sewer systems, and they needed to do it. And I'm a water supply engineer. I worked at the state health department, the chief engineer there, basically. And when I started reading their water supply plan, I recognized that not only do they have sewer issues, but they have water mains that are old. And this is the same vintage at East Berlin. I'm looking at some big dollars in East Berlin to fix what the problem is there. There's gonna be lines that have to be relined and lines that are gonna be replaced. I'm estimating it over $5 million easy.
eh,
Can I just
As-
say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
as far as, obviously, each district sets its own rates. Can you tell me what would happen, if there was one rate to cover all three?
Well, let me give you an example. I'm a Worthington Fire District customer. I pay almost $1,000 with the tax and and my wife and I are very conservative in water usage. Now, the bottom line is if I were a Berlin Water Control customer, my own customer, I'd be saving $350. Now, this is one of the issues that the engineer would actually do, or Ref Tillis would do, is take a financial analysis and look at what would happen if you consolidated the three systems. Because what happens is that the two other systems, and this was the issue with Fuss and O'Neill back in 1998, they looked at only the water rates. If you look at the water rates look cheap because you don't include the taxes. If you start including the taxes, and you're dependent on the taxes. It's not the case where the taxes are earmarked for, I would say, capital improvements. That isn't the question. I've looked at the actual fiscal analysis of each company, and they need that tax money. It's not set aside for capital improvements at all. It's part of the functional operational money.
So, you gave me two of the three. What would Kensington be paying?
Well, Kensington, I'm not familiar with it. Their rate actually is higher than ours now, at $4.67 per 100 cubic feet. They have a mill rate of 1.1, and their water sewer rate is 5.8, $5.81, and ours is 6.52. So it's a little bit, ours is a little bit higher. However, they had an EPA agreement, and I think that is going to be monitored again, because what we're looking at, and now I have a meter. It took me $80,000 to put a brand new meter in, and nobody knew where the meter should go and how it should be set up. So we hired an engineer to do it, and it was in the wrong place, and it was getting the wrong information. Now it's giving us the right information, and what we're seeing is a substantial INI, and they're pretty sure that they know how much it is. That's gonna increase their rate substantially. Because of that, because before we were doing it on the basis of consumption, and consumption isn't a good figure to do it. And the other thing I want to point out is in Kensington, 2 years ago, they purchased all the water from New Britain. They purchased 299 million gallons in 1 year, and only sold 190 million gallons. So 110 million gallons went someplace.
Hmm.
And in their
Okay.
report.
What do you mean it went someplace?
Excuse me?
Is that the infiltration that you're talking about?
Leakage. Leakage, that's the water supply. That's leakage into the system, into the ground.
Wow.
And, well, I'll make my comment while I'm done with my questions, just, it almost seems to me that, to spend $140,000 when we don't have willing parties and you have to get the information through FOI, it doesn't sound very promising to me. And if we're gonna end up having to go the route of the legislature change, then I would be for the study if it would be something that would give us enough detail to make a case for that. But if it was just gonna be another study, then I'm not sure I would be for it.
Well, we don't have a current study that, the study that was done by Fuds and O'Neill, and I read it very carefully many times over. One of the problems was it only scoped itself on the water rates, which is a big mistake. They thought the sewer portion of it was so complicated, they didn't want to deal with it. However, they went back and they included one whole page of criteria which they felt made sense into incorporate. And if you if you're looking at a lot of utilities in Connecticut, a lot of them are being acquired by larger utilities. They're conglomerating. They're not falling apart. They're not keeping, and it's unusual because as a state health department employee, I don't think that there's one town in Connecticut that has 3 municipal systems in its town borders. And this is a little bit ironic to have that. And what happens is that when you start planning, you can't have 3 entities planning in 3 different directions. That doesn't make any sense for the town.
I agree.
So would this be considered a step towards moving it to the legislature? Is that
I would consider it just like the gentleman, Mr. Paradise mentioned right now, is that this would be data and useful information to the legislature to say, here's the situation. It doesn't make sense for us to continue with this road. And this is what we'd like to do. Now, whether it actually happens, that's another story. But the point of it is that this provides data. It's not Ray Jarema saying this or somebody else on the board saying that this is an issue. Yes, I know it's an issue, but I would have a third party actually come out. Now, Leonard Engineering has actually done work, which is in all 3 utilities. So it doesn't have a vested interest in any one of us particularly. So it can do a fair job. Riftillis is well nationally known, so it's a financial entity, and I would presume that the data that we get from them, I'm not as familiar with it. Attorney D'Onofrio of our town council has worked with them when he was at the regional water authority, and has worked with them and agrees that they're a very good company. So I think the caliber of the report would be useful, but also the information is interesting because I don't know that the town really has a good handle as to what happens if there's a next collapse. I'd like to say that won't be, but then on the other hand, Kevin mentioned the fact that the payment was made. Well, this is the first year that I've been doing payments, and I give them like 5 weeks to pay the bill from Mattabesset. Worthington went back and actually was 3 weeks late. I just got it the other day. They paid their bill. They haven't paid me for the last quarter. They're 2 months late on the water bill. The next water bill will be due in the end of August. It's $129,000. They just canceled, just the other day, they canceled the project that they were going to do at Webster Heights for $800,000. They were going to borrow money from the state at 2% for 20 years, and they decided not to do it. So basically, they canned that whole idea. I don't know what's happening to them financially. I don't understand the situation. Seems to me a little ironic that all these things are starting to line up together.
Okay, any other questions? Well, I mean, after listening to everyone, I think that the study will be useful, for us and help us with the legislative piece if we need to. And I think we need more updated information to really understand, this whole picture. So, any other discussions? Okay.
I just want to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Why does it seem like the town is stepping up to pay for this study, and we have to help them out every single time, it seems, historically? Why they're not being, I don't know, at least friendly? Help us out. Like, where's all this money going with all these payments if they're renegating on all these projects they're supposed to be doing? I think the town's big price line.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and that's been the concern, and it's been concern of the board, of the commission. Also, the mayor several times has pointed out too that he's perplexed with this whole process, and you started out mentioning the fact that the regulatory agencies, as I said, Pura can't do anything. State Health Department, particularly now, they've hired 2 attorneys, and they're very legalistic. They don't even do what I used to do. I used to help out utilities. At this point in time, they're not doing that. They're just in there for compliance and enforcement, which to me is a whole different bailiwick than what I'm used to. But nonetheless, so I don't see too much assistance from them. And also, I wrote them 3 years and I've been writing them every year. The fact that my own system, Worthington Fire District, loses about 60,000 gallons per day. And it has been doing that for the longest time. And I calculate it for them, I give them the information, and then I just read one of the minutes from the last month and it says, yeah, they have a bit of unaccounted for water concern. Well, that's about it. I mean, you really have to do more than that.
Do you think that they know how bad their infrastructure is and they're afraid for
Well,
us?
see, this is just it. We don't have a good handle on that. This will help us out. Some of the things that happens here is this.
No, hold on. No, your personal opinion. Do you think they know?
My personal opinion,
Yes.
yes.
You think they know how bad the infrastructure is that they have in their hands right now?
I don't think that they actually fully know. They were a little bit taken back by some of the, they haven't read the reports. I've read the reports and I'm looking at them, I'm saying, in fact, well, I want to tell you something. When I first got hired here, I read almost every technical report here. I read all the minutes back to 1966 to get a good idea of what's going on. And I was dumbfounded because all the engineering reports that were in there had shown that each of the districts would drag their feet on everything. Every little time, they didn't pay for a lot of things, they failed to pay for it, they failed to do it, and it was consistent. And I don't, and we're also in the portion of blame too. There were certain things that we didn't do, and I've been ticking off a little bit at a time. And Kevin knows this. Every project, water, sewer, I've been ticking them off as I think priorities are. And I've got a set of priorities, and I try to follow that, and that's what I'm doing the best I can. And you have to chip away at it. You can't let this build up to the point where it becomes a huge block. And then you're looking at it and saying, where's the money gonna come from? And with these relining projects, if you're not doing them, a lot of bigger utilities have set aside money almost every year to do X number. It's just like the paving thing. Every year they do a little bit each year to chip away at it. They're not, I can't say for sure that they're doing it or not doing it because I don't have that detail. But from the reports I'm reading, it doesn't appear to me that it is being done.
Okay, I mean, we could probably go the rest of the evening to talk about this. So, but, all right, any more comments? Okay, well, let's take a vote. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that in the interest of any appearance of impropriety, since I do work at the Kensington Fire District, I will abstain.
Okay, all right. All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any- Is that unanimous? Those opposed? Okay, okay, unanimous.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate
Okay,
it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
thank you for
Ray.
the information, Ray.
Very good. If there was any time that you wanted any additional information or status of that, just let me know. I'd be happy to give you an update of some kind if you'd like.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I
Thanks
would
again.
personally like all the information at some point, please.
Sure.
Okay,
If you like, we can stop in and I can show you some of the detail if you like to. I've got some estimates and costs of whatever.
I may, thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. Take care.
all right. We have a motion, item F2.
Move to appropriate an additional $360,000 State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development Municipal Brownfields Grant for work at 55 Steel Boulevard, formerly known as 889 Farmington Avenue, to the Municipal Brownfields Grant account in the 889 Farmington Ave Remediation Fund upon execution of the grant agreement.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 So unanimous? Okay. So move.
Move to transfer 71,500 as detailed in the accompanying spreadsheet to be attached to the minutes to cover year-end transfers in the identified accounts.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Kevin, I can't call it up now. Where is it? On the transfer sheet, I don't have it in front of me, but I know it was the last item under the golf course and it was $11,000. What account is that?
Bank charges,
What is it?
Bank charges, it's credit
Yeah.
card fees.
Yeah, is that something that came up as unexpended because of the split out between the pro and the town collecting fees?
No, it came
Why
because
is it so
of
much off?
credit card volume. We
Really?
we had a fair number of checks rather than credit cards, different than prior year.
Okay,
So it's just basically the percentage. We also switched to a new processor. So we moved from Golf Now and an local enterprise server system to 4UP, which is a cloud-based system. And as part of that, we signed a new agreement with a different credit card processor who was accepting a lesser fee.
okay,
Their percentage was a little bit less than what the others.
okay. All right, and on the electric line, is that a line that you establish or they establish?
We do it together.
Okay,
That one is somewhat volatile year to year. It really depends on how dry the season is. To the extent the season is dry and they have to pull more from the pump house and pay money for electricity, they end up incurring more. To the extent we have a wet season, that number will be a lot lower. So it's a somewhat volatile number.
okay,
Both of those we brought down in the next budget. So this year's budget, we did lower both of those.
okay.
But they could come down even more as we look over the course of the, first 6 months or so of this year and develop next year's budget.
And my last question on the water. It seems to me during the year, we added monies to that line. Is that correct?
Yes,
Because there was a leak or an unexpected bill quite significantly higher.
yes.
So that was rectified and now we ended the year with money left over.
We anticipated that the next bill would be as high and it wasn't quite as high.
Okay,
Um,
all right, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so moved. New business item 4, F4. Make a
Okay.
motion?
Move to rescind the Board of Finance vote on July 9, 2024, not approving an ordinance appropriating $1,100,000 for town roof replacements 2024 and authorizing the issue of $1,100,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
Yeah.
Those- those-
So,
Those are-
so
Go ahead.
is this because the town council has now passed it?
yes,
Okay, now, what we had heard at the last meeting was they were referring this to PBC. Did they refer this to PBC?
I think they did also.
yes.
So why are we in the next item looking to appropriate it when this was referred to PBC but not yet approved? And the golf course recreation one, we're not treating the same way.
Well, this was approved and then referred to Public Building Commission,
Approved by,
the council. But
Okay.
the other bond ordinance has not been approved. It was not approved at 2 meetings ago, and it was not on the agenda for this meeting. It will ultimately be on the agenda for their first meeting in September if there's a positive referral from the Public Building Commission. That would be for the athletic facilities bond ordinance. This one was approved. The reason of sending it to the Public Building Commission wasn't questioning whether the projects are necessary. It was about the price tag on the projects and concern that the number that was being requested is higher than is believed necessary. The athletic facilities ordinance was questioned even at the meeting on Tuesday night about whether all of the projects on that ordinance are necessary, and if necessary, or even necessary this quickly. So there were concerns about, could they be delayed? Is it necessary?
And when you say projects, can you be more specific?
They questioned the track and whether it could be delayed for a couple of years. And they did question whether the sand traps could be redone with insurance money and not necessarily need town money. Saul did talk about the change and the improvement to the sand traps. And then there wasn't a lot of discussion on the bridges. There was a little bit of discussion about the LoCIP money that was intended to be used, which is creating a bit of challenge from regulatory matters. So the council didn't vote to approve that ordinance, so that's why it's not returned here. It won't come back to you for the same motion until such time as they approve it. This one was approved that night. So the idea here is if you approve it, it is now available. And once Public Building Commission makes the decision of or what they decide to do with it from a price standpoint, we could then move forward with that project. This one's a little bit more pressing in the sense that the roof on Town Hall is actually leaking. Now, it's not pouring in, but it is leaking. So the idea is to move this forward and then move forward once the Public Building Commission has provided their insights. Just like any other project, it would go back to council for approval. Doug, I know Doug is on. If there's anything else you would like to add to that.
I just trying to understand the mechanism here and what it means. Like, so they go to Public Building Commission, they're authorizing an ordinance for this $1 million, and the PBC comes back and says, well, this should be doable for $750,000. What happens?
The project would be $750,000.
What happens to the ordinance for the higher amount?
The ordinance, there's two options at that point. One is to leave the ordinance in place. Remember, this is for two roof projects. This is for Town Hall and then also for the Library Community Center. If there's money left over after that, probably about 3 meetings ago, I came in and asked you to deauthorize the Berlin Turnpike pipe work that had an ordinance, as well as the fire radio project, which had some money left over in that ordinance when the project was completed. So one option is when it's all done, if there's any money left on the ordinance, come back and you deauthorize it and it's now no longer available. It's almost like giving a credit card with a certain limit, and when you're done making the purchase, if there's anything left, the limit is reduced. The other option is to leave the ordinance in place. You have effectively bought this from the attorneys, if you will. We've paid the attorneys to draft this, and you can leave it in place. We do have a couple of old ordinances that are still out there, and we've intentionally left them in place. They're both related to open space acquisitions. It's not because there's any imminent desire or intent to use them. But again, since the town has already paid the money and purchased the ordinance, if in the future you determine that there is open space you would like to purchase, there's an opportunity to leverage that ordinance. Having the ordinance only means you have the option of borrowing. It doesn't require, and it doesn't in any way eliminate the need to go to the council for approval of any project. Even if you approve this ordinance, anything that would be done would still need to go through the normal approval process with the town council.
So that speaks to having a general wording in a roof if you wanted to reuse it for something else.
For some other roof, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I listened to the meetings and I think the issue was not with the golf course so much as it was the track. I'm not sure. I don't understand how this works, but I don't understand why we had to take and put a track that just fell out of the sky. We need $1 million track now.
But this is not that. This is not that.
Well, no, I'm talking about in general. We knew that the roofs needed to be replaced for a while now. We've been discussing this for a few years now. We knew that the golf course needed the bridges. Why weren't those two combined on a bond instead of the golf course and the athletics field? I mean, I would be fine with voting for the golf course and the roofs together tonight. But that's not how it was put together, and I don't understand why this $1 million track replacement that, like I said, fell out of the sky, is put in with a bond issue that we knew we were gonna have to do for the golf course bridges and for the bunkers.
I think there's timing issues between the two. One's more immediate need. The other two are still being discussed as far as timing's concerned. When they talked about the track the other day, they're trying to decide from a cost perspective, they could potentially get 2 more years out of it. Do you move that forward? There's still in debate about whether they're gonna do cement-based or asphalt-based. To me, that thing's not flushed out at all.
And that's the problem. It shouldn't even have been with the golf course. We know the golf course bridges need to be done. We know the bunkers have to be repaired. That should have been put with the roofs. And now here we are. We have 2 projects that we can't put forward because of this.
Well, one of the things when we're putting ordinances together, 2 factors. One, typically you would put an ordinance of similar nature. So you might have an open space ordinance, or, you know, it might be something very specific, like the pipe on Berlin Turnpike was a very specific ordinance. The challenge with a very specific ordinance is if you find that there's something close by, but not specifically identified in that very tight ordinance, you don't have the option of using bond money for that. So the idea here was keep it more general so that in the event something arises that is peripheral to the original project, but related, we could use the money. I'll give you an example. When the town took out the last athletic facilities bond, the underlying purpose initially was to replace Sage 2, the softball field at Sage Park. When the project started, everything was moving along and it was fine. They basically were tearing out the dirt field, redoing drainage and putting in the field. If you've been out there, it's a beautiful field and they did a great job. Partway through the project, as they were ripping the field out, they realized that the wires leading to the poles out in the outfield for the lights were actually run straight across the field. So in the process of doing this, and because it wasn't on the as-built, they actually tore the wiring out. Because there was wording in there that provided some flexibility around the field, they were able to actually stay within budget, but use some of that previously bonded money to change the way the wiring is done. So they now have a juncture box over by, behind home plate, and the wires run around the outside and then are connected along the outfield so that that problem won't happen again. Providing a little bit of flexibility rather than keeping the bonds very narrow allows for those unexpected things that can come up and to be able to address them without having to go back and either modify the ordinance or pass another one and delay. As far as the roofs and the golf course or the roofs and the track, typically you wouldn't do a bond ordinance that would be 2 things that are not really connected. The reason that the golf course and the track were connected is it was under the broad premise of an athletic facilities upgrade. The last thing I will say is keeping it a little bit general, not so it can be anything, but it stays within the vein, for example, of athletic facilities. When the town goes out for borrowing, oftentimes we receive a premium. Berlin is a desirable community to loan money to. And so if we went out and let's just say we tried to borrow $5 million, we may receive $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of money beyond that. It's called bond premium. That money can only be used either for debt service or applied to other projects that have a bond ordinance. So having the ordinance and the flexibility may provide opportunities for the town to fund something that maybe wasn't intended. You know, at the end, I gave the list Sal you had asked for as we go through this and start bonding to provide a list. If we were to receive, let's just say $400,000 of bond premium, the choice might be, let's fund the fire vehicles that are coming in 2026 that are already on order, and we know that needs to happen. And now you don't have to bond in the future. You've received it at this lower interest rate. Or it might be that the project for Hubbard Park comes in, we don't get the steep grant, but the town would like to move forward. and put in pickleball courts, tennis courts, splash pad, whatever that is. Or you might decide Percival Field, Hubbard Park, one of those pool buildings, which has been in need of repair for a while. Maybe that's good use of that money. So the idea was to try to keep some flexibility. It in no way requires doing anything with a building or doing anything else outside of what was intended. And every project I've mentioned, if we wanted to do that, even if the funding could be put into those projects, the projects themselves could not be approved and spending could not happen without going through the normal contractual approval process. That's kind of the idea of keeping it a little bit broad, so we're not paying for ordinances and then canceling them when the project's done and then paying for another one. That it's not the most expensive thing you will incur, but it's taxpayer money that we're trying to avoid spending over and over, and giving you as much flexibility as possible, you and the council presumably, to decide how best to do this.
Okay. Kevin,
Right.
just,
Go ahead, Sal.
just quick question. When we, have these monies on this ordinance, do we have a formal quote, that supports this stuff, or do we then go get a formal quote? It's just a rough order magnitude. Just
for the
wanna know
roof, you mean?
procedurally. Yeah, procedurally, on any ordinance, do we actually come forward beforehand with a formal quote, or just a ROM or rough order magnitude and then get the quote? I'm just trying to understand the process.
Typically, we will do a cost analysis, not necessarily a formal quote.
Okay,
And in this case, the roof ordinance was supported. Al Jakunski from Jakunski and Hume. So those of you who saw Brian Humes do the presentation on the police station project, as well as
Yep.
many other projects in town, Al is his partner in the firm. Al gave cost estimates to Doug Solit, the facilities director, based on
Okay.
square footage, based on prevailing,
okay,
with contingency. And then we added in a little bit more for the idea that if there was a delay, you'll have some inflationary items. So we typically would do that. It is possible to have a specific quote. The challenge with a specific quote is they're often only good for 60 days.
right.
And you start this process with one meeting asking to go to bond counsel. You're looking typically at,
Yep.
quick one would be 6 to 8 weeks. It might be longer to get the bond approved. So we
Okay.
try to get good cost estimates, but not necessarily everything fully vetted.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, what it's sounding like to me is that the golf course stuff is going nowhere as long as it's coupled to the track. You know, they were planning on doing that project this fall, so it doesn't interfere with play. The project is anticipated to take like 9 weeks. And, you know, with, you know, even an aggressive schedule, you know, that we had talked about last February when we started talking about this project, you know, we thought we could have RFPs in and they could start, you know, and get the schedule on for mid-October. I guess my question to you, Kevin, is the attorneys have already drafted language for these ordinances. How hard is it for them to separate the two so that the golf course has a chance of going forward?
It's not hard at all for bond counsel. What it would require is coming back in September and having the council authorize the interim town manager, which by extension would be me, to go work with bond counsel to draft I guess I'll just be rough numbers, $1 million bond ordinance for bunkers and bridge upgrades and any related items that might be found that need repair at Timberland Golf Course. And then that would be drafted. There would be a public hearing on that. And then the council.
Even though there's already been a public hearing?
Well, because you're coming forward with a new ordinance. If the council chose to, the council could look to modify that ordinance, because they had the public hearing and say, we want to reduce it by $1 million and take out those other items. But at this point,
I'm just thinking if there really aren't significant or issues, and I know the PBC is going to get presentations by the golf course director. But if the main issue seems to be the track, I'm just looking for a way to get the project done.
How
Yeah.
about if we just pay for it with some of the $3 million surplus we just had? I'd be in favor of that. We were gonna spend it on capital anyways. It was in the budget, so why not use it now?
Well, I would caution you that the 1.25 million of capital are items that are needed as well. There are a number of items on that list that are needed. I think before you would go down that step, you would want to make sure that you review that list. There are school vans. They've just taken another one off the road. The town is desperately behind in that. There are several items on there that are of pressing needs as well. And keep in mind, there's absolutely no capital in this budget. So if you're proposing to use that money instead of the items in capital, it would suggest to go a full year of no capital.
So
and to-
Jerry's talking about a timing issue. Why can't you do what Tim said and then issue an ordinance for those other items and get them done if there's the same level of urgency is not there? The golf course is a seasonal issue. You can't do the work in the winter. You can order a van in the winter.
I think one of the things that comes to mind is we don't usually bond small
Okay.
pieces of equipment because of the useful lives. The
Okay,
useful life of the bunker project should be
20 years.
guessing 10 to 20 years.
So why don't we,
It is only $1 million.
why don't you just do the simple thing and separate the both? Like, I agree that the track thing came out of nowhere. Is the track behind the high school?
Yeah.
The field.
You gotta go walk it, Raul.
I do it all the time. That's where I coach the kids. Like the track
Yeah,
is, sorry.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's fine. I think that they should never have been included in the first place because we know how bad the golf course has been. The golf course should not be doing any kind of construction in April, May, or June. Not at all. It should be done during the winter time. And obviously, we know how bad the roofs are in town hall and at the library. Just put new carpet in the library for crying out loud.
Keep in mind that
damages.
keep in mind that the ordinance as written didn't specifically say the track per se. So that money doesn't have to be spent for the track. It was an athletic facilities grant for various athletic facilities, including Timberland Golf.
Yeah.
It does not have to be done for the track. That was a proposed project in need of replacement. If the decision from the elected bodies is not to move forward, the money won't be spent for that. In fact, if that's the decision, the money wouldn't even be bonded. The ordinance only opens the opportunity. It doesn't mean that the town is paying 1 penny of interest, principal, or anything. That project doesn't move forward, then the money won't be borrowed for the project.
Yeah, we don't get any more say, but the council has the say on the contract approval. So, I mean, there's safeguards in the system still, before a dollar is spent.
So Jerry, you guys have quotes and everything for,
The RFP is being put together.
okay. So, I mean, that can expeditiously move forward, and then whether the town council can make a mod or whatever, or just go as is with the bond in total, and then we'll make an adjustment later. Let's get the golf course thing moving along,
So what's
We're all-
before you
we're all
tonight,
in favor of it, really, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, so.
what you have with the motion in front of you is just for the roofs.
Yep.
You won't see anything for the
Yeah, I hear you.
facilities till
Yep.
the council.
No,
moves.
I hear you.
And
Well, I
wasn't
mean, if the town council wants to have a special meeting to expedite something, that's fine too, I don't know. Rather than wait till September, I don't know, so.
It's a good idea.
wasn't this what was needed to be done? Well, not needed, but was on the agenda the last time, but postponed because of
Yes,
council not, so this was
Yeah.
something that we had already
Yeah.
Kevin had explained how dire the need is for the roofs.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take a vote on,
Rescinding.
yeah, rescinding. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. So moved. Item 5,
Move to read the title of the following proposed ordinance and to waive the reading of the remainder of the ordinance incorporating its full text into the minutes of this meeting. And to approve an ordinance appropriating $1,100,000 for town roof replacements, 2024. And authorizing the issue of $1,100,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, item 6, Kevin, I guess there was a discussion in last meeting about us having concurrent meetings sometimes with the town council. The question I have is when we always initially established the schedule, I thought ours always followed the following week from the town council. Wasn't that the case for the most part?
Generally, the council meets the first and third Tuesday, and the Board of Finance meets the second Tuesday.
Okay,
Council's had a few instances, sometimes in November with the election.
Yep.
But more recently, in the last couple of years, they've moved their December meeting to one meeting and pushed it back to the second week. And then there was another holiday. I forgot which one it was, but there was another holiday that fell in a couple months ago where they moved it back. So this year, I think or the last, say, 12 months, we've probably experienced 3, maybe 4 times where the meetings were in conflict, which is a lot more than we had seen the first few years of the Board of Finance.
yeah,
I did look at, if you move back to the third Tuesday, that means you're likely to have as many, if not more, conflicts with their regular meeting.
Sure.
So I did look at moving it out to Thursday. The third and fourth Thursday, the third especially, are incredibly busy with town hall and trying to find a room. The fourth Thursday is also pretty busy with trying to find rooms. What the second Thursday would provide is whether the council meets the first Tuesday or the second, if they push it back, your meeting would be immediately following. The agenda would be known and items could still be circulated in advance. And the other reason of putting this on the agenda now and starting it in September is if you make a change to a meeting within 30 days, that meeting becomes a special meeting.
Yeah.
Because you're not meeting in August, if you were to decide to change it now, I could notice September through December and they'd all remain regular meetings, which would also mean if something unexpected happened at the first council meeting, whether that's the first or second Tuesday, it was a regular meeting, it could be added on to the agenda. And so if you're going to make the change, now would be the time. The only other time that would be better is obviously in December when we're setting up the meetings would be the ideal time, but
yeah, there's a few of us on the board that have conflicts, with the second Thursday of each month, so,
Yeah,
so that's not good for even me, you know what I mean, so.
I think for the few conflicts that we have, the second Tuesday is probably still the best. I mean,
okay.
I know it is for me.
Yeah,
For me as
I-
well.
I think so too. And, like you said, it's been unusual this year, Kevin, so, and usually we plan, around the town council schedule, so,
And we both established them in December. I know Kate and I have conversations. We try to establish them and try to consider what's in sync. November is always an odd time because when it's a municipal election year, they will actually meet only on the third Tuesday of the month. So they skip the first, obviously, for election day, and then they skip to start that third one, which is also the swearing in night. You have the last cycle, maybe the last two, actually canceled or moved your November meeting to be the same night as the swearing in, which makes sense. But other than that, we end up with a conflict on the second night.
Are we gonna have issues in August and November with the early voting? Cause they took over that room and there's a primary coming up in early August.
Well, your
That
August
started
meeting,
like the 6th or something, or 30, don't remember when.
yeah, your August meeting was canceled, so we did this special meeting in lieu of that. So
Okay,
we'll be okay for August. November, I think your meeting is going to be after the election, so the early
Okay.
voting shouldn't affect it.
okay. 'Cause that goes to 14 days.
Yeah. If anything, it could affect October,
Okay,
but I think we're far enough out in October.
I think we've shown that our group is flexible enough that if we have to do a special meeting or something, we'll do it, you know, I mean,
Yeah, I
agree.
think that's working out good with the special meetings.
yeah.
And if you end up with a conflict because of the voting, early voting or something, you could also do this and say, we're moving it to Zoom only. Especially if there's not a pressing matter to be, lack of a better phrase, vigorously debated.
Okay.
okay.
So we'll leave it the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, leave it the
If
way
you're
it is.
okay with that, I know you expressed.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone, have a good night.
All right.
Have
take
Have a
care.
good one, guys.
Enjoy the summer.
Take care, everybody.